Department of Justice, Dean Sauer of Missouri to be Solicitor General.
Mr. President, I send a cloture motion to the desk.
The clerk will report.
Cloture motion, we, the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, do hereby move to bring to a close debate on the nomination of Dean Sauer of Missouri to be Solicitor General of the United States, signed by 17 senators as follows.
Mr. President, I ask consent to read the names we waived.
Without objection.
I move to proceed to legislative session.
The questions on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion is agreed to.
I move to proceed to executive session to consider calendar number 47.
The questions on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion is agreed to. The clerk will report the nomination.
Nomination, Department of Justice, Harmeet Dillon of California to be an Assistant Attorney General.
Mr. President, I send a cloture motion to the desk.
The clerk will report the motion to invoke cloture.
Cloture motion, we, the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, do hereby move to bring to a close debate on the nomination of Harmeet Dillon of California to be an Assistant Attorney General, signed by 17 senators as follows.
Mr. President, I ask consent to reading the names we waived.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I yield the floor.
The senator from New Jersey.
I am really grateful, Mr. President. I'm grateful you're in the chair, and I'm grateful to be able to rise right now and speak. I want to say at the top that I have a tremendous love for this institution, and a lot of that's born from the people that are here, from the pages I get to know in every class to the folks that work the doors, the clerks, the parliamentarians. This is a special place, and a lot of the people who are known here are not the ones that really keep this place functioning. I come in here days and I have good moods or bad moods, but always find myself lifted when I walk onto this floor. It's a sacred civic space. It is extraordinary, and I'm always aware of the weight of history when I walk in here, no matter good day, bad day, whether I'm in a rush or not. When I touch the Senate floor, I feel something really magnificent. I don't think that our founders would have ever imagined a body like this, with black people on both sides of the aisle, with women serving here, with folks from many different backgrounds. We are, in many ways, doing what this Senate, what the founders had envisioned, which was this idea of every generation making this a more perfect union. But there have been times in this journey where our union was in crisis and was in peril. There have been times in this great American journey over our 250 years where so many heroes had to emerge, people that I've come to revere, like Joshua Chamberlain from Maine, who played such a pivotal role in the Battle of Gettysburg. What a noble soul he was. He would later go on to be the governor of his state and go on to great things, but his heroism lay that in a time of crisis he stood up. I know there are veterans in this body, and I admire them so much, who have answered that call to serve our country and put their lives at sacrifice. There are people that I admire, that are heroes of mine, that were suffragists who were people who fought as abolitionists. There are people more recently that I've come to lionize and admire because they did so much for this country, not with titles, not with high rank or positions, but folks who, when this country was facing crossroads, was facing crises, they stood up, they spoke up. One of my greatest heroes of life was a man I got to serve with named John Lewis. And I served with him in this body, and every opportunity I had, I would ask him about the times when he was just a 20-something. He was the youngest person who was a featured speaker on the March on Washington. He was called the bravest man in the civil rights movement because he kept putting himself in harm's way to dramatize, to let folks know, to bring attention to the injustices in this world, and to say very strongly that this, what is going on in our country, is not normal, that this going on in our country is wrong. I stand on this floor as a United States Senator, but I revere people who never stood on this floor, people who, before they even got to their 30s and 40s and 50s in life, were out there as great patriots fighting for this nation. I rise today in an unusual manner, and I want to be clear and explain that, but I just want to tell you what John Lewis said. It's a quote so many people know. And he really spoke not to members of the Senate or the Congress. He was really speaking to Americans. He said, "Get in good trouble, necessary trouble. Help redeem the soul of America." John Lewis died in 2020, in July, at a time that it was Donald Trump's first term in office. And he did what Congress people did, but he also did some really extraordinary things to fight for health care. My friend Chris Murphy knows about that. He was there when John Lewis did a open Facebook chat, not in this chamber or in the House chamber. He sat on the steps and people were there. I remember when he did a sit-in. They had to shut the cameras off on him. He got in good trouble on the House side, too. And so I start tonight thinking about him. I've been thinking about him a lot during these last 71 days. Get in good trouble, necessary trouble, help redeem the soul of America, and had to ask myself, if he's my hero, how am I living up to his words? I think Democrats and Republicans have made a lot of mistakes. No side has a monopoly on the truth. No side has been perfect servants of this country. But what's happened in the last 71 days is a patent demonstration of a time where John Lewis's call to everyone has, I think, become more urgent and more pressing. And if I think it's a call for our country, I have to ask myself how I'm living these words. So tonight, I rise with the intention of getting in some good trouble. I rise with the intention of disrupting the normal business of the United States Senate for as long as I am physically able. I rise tonight because I believe sincerely that our country is in crisis. And I believe that not in a partisan sense, because so many of the people that have been reaching out to my office in pain, in fear, having their lives upended, so many of them identify themselves as Republicans. Indeed, conversations from in this body to in this building to across my state and recently in a travel across the country, Republicans as well as Democrats are talking to me about what they feel is a sense of dread about a growing crisis, or what they point to about what is going wrong, that bedrock commitments in our country that both sides rely on, that people from all backgrounds rely on, those bedrock commitments are being broken. Unnecessary hardships are being borne by Americans of all backgrounds. And institutions which are special in America, which are precious, which are unique in our country, are being recklessly, and I would say even unconstitutionally affected, attacked, even shattered. In just 71 days, the President of the United States has inflicted so much harm on Americans' safety, financial stability, the core foundations of our democracy, and even our aspirations as a people for, from our highest offices, a sense of common decency. These are not normal times in America. And they should not be treated as such. John Lewis, so many heroes before us would say that this is the time to stand up, to speak up. This is the time to get in some good trouble, to get into necessary trouble. I can't allow this body to continue without doing something different, speaking out. The threats to American people and American democracy are grave and urgent, and we all must do more. We all must do more against them. But those 10 words, if it is to be, it is up to me. All of us have to think of those 10 words, 10 two-letter words. If it is to be, if it is up to me, because I believe generations from now will look back at this moment and have a single question. Where were you? Where were you when our country was in crisis and when American people were asking for help? Help me. Help me. Did we speak up? When 73 million American seniors who rely on Social Security were to have that promise mocked, attacked, and then to have the services undermined, to be told that there will be no one there to answer if you call for help. When our seniors became afraid and worried and panicked because of the menacing words of their president, of the most wealthy person in the world, of cabinet secretaries, did we speak up? When the American economy in 71 days has been upended, when prices at the grocery store were skyrocketing and the stock market was plunging, when pension funds, 401ks were going down, when Americans were hurting and looking up, where the resounding answer to this question was no. Are you better off economically than you were 71 days ago? Where were you? Did you speak up? At a time when the President of the United States was launching trade wars against our most close allies, when he was firing regulators who investigate America's biggest banks and biggest corporations and stop them from taking advantage of the little guy or the little gal or my grandmother or your grandfather, dismantling the agency that protects consumers from fraud, that the only one whose sole purpose is to look out for them. Did you speak up when the President of the United States, in a way that is so crass and craven, peddled his own meme coin and made millions upon millions upon millions of dollars for his own bank account at a time so many are struggling economically? Did you speak up when the President of the United States did what amounts to a car commercial for the richest man in the world right in front of America's house, the White House, when the President tried to take health care away? Where were you? Did you speak up? Threatening a program called Medicaid helps people with disabilities, helps expectant mothers, helps millions upon millions of Americans. And why? Why? As a part of a larger plan to pay for tax cuts for the wealthiest amongst us, who've done the best over the last 20 years. For billionaires, it seems so close to the president that they sat right on the dais at his inauguration and sit in his cabinet meetings at the White House. Did you speak up when he gutted public education, slashed funds for pediatric cancer research, fired thousands of veterans who risked their lives for their country, when he abandoned our allies and our international commitments at a time when floods, fires, and hurricanes and droughts are devastating communities across this country, when countries all around the world are banding together to do something, and he turned his back? Did you speak up when outbreaks of dangerous infectious diseases are still a global threat, but yet we have stopped engaging in the efforts necessary to meet those threats? Where were you when the American press was being censored, when international students were being disappeared from American streets without due process, when American universities were being intimidated into silence, challenging that fundamental idea of freedom of thought, freedom of expression, when the law firms that represent clients that may not be favored were attacked and attacked and attacked? Where were you? Did you speak up when they came for those firms? Or what about when the people who attacked the police officers, who defended this building and American democracy on January 6th, who just outside those doors put their lives on the line for us, and many of them would later die? Where were you when the president pardoned them, celebrated them, and even talked of giving them money, the people who savagely beat American police officers? Did you speak up when Americans from across the country were all speaking up? More and more voices in this country speaking up, saying this is not right, this is un-American, this is not who we are, this is not America. Did you speak up? And so I rise tonight because I believe to be about what is normal right now, when so much abnormal is happening, is unacceptable. I rise tonight because silence at this moment of national crisis would be a betrayal of some of the greatest heroes of our nation, because at stake in this moment is nothing less than everything that we brag about, that we talk about, that makes us special. At stake right now are some of our most basic American principles that so many Americans understand are worth fighting for, worth standing for, worth speaking up for. Like if you work hard your entire life and pay into Social Security, it should be there for you when you retire, and you should not have to question if those paychecks will arrive, and the government should strive to improve service to you, not brag about cutting it. Basic American principles like if you serve your nation in the military, if you put your life in danger abroad, you will be respected and taken care of. You will be cherished and honored and not forced to worry that the federal employees who provide you with care, many of whom are veterans themselves, will be fired, or the benefits that you rely on will be denied, or that your health care needs won't be met. Basic American principles like your child will have access to a high-quality public education, that every child has a unique genius. Even our children, beautiful children with special needs, they have genius. And that our children can go to school and parents and teachers know that they will be safe there. At stake now are those basic American principles that the people you elect to serve you in government will represent you and not try to make themselves richer, not run some scam. And call you a sucker. These basic ideals of our nation, that everyone's rights will be equally protected and everyone will be held accountable under the law. Right now, all of this, things that make our country different, are under attack. Our constituents are asking us to acknowledge this. Everywhere I travel now, I hear from Republicans and independents and Democrats who are afraid, who are worried, who are angry. And I think about John Lewis, who taught me that fear is not something to be shunned. It's almost a signpost that you're headed in the right direction. It is something that is a necessary precondition. You cannot have great fear without great courage. John Lewis would tell us that this is a time for great courage. He would tell us that anger is a fuel. It can consume you, debilitate you, or it could fuel you to put yourself in service of others. I feel if my friend was here, if my hero was here, he would tell us and try to teach us that this is a moment to know that despair is only possible if you don't meet it as an agent of hope. If John Lewis was here, he would look at me and say, "What are you doing? What are we doing?" So tonight I rise in an unusual way. I rise with the intention to stand here until I can stand no longer, until I'm physically unable to stand anymore. I'm going to speak up. I'm going to try to cause some good trouble in this body I respect so much. I'm going to try to cause what I believe is necessary trouble. I'm going to try to honor the legacy that I know I've inherited as an American, the legacy I think about when I come to this floor and feel sometimes overwhelmed with all the sacrifice and struggle that had to get me here. Good people who caused good trouble in the face of slavery, good people who caused good trouble in the face of the denial of the right to vote, good people who caused good trouble in the cause of equal rights, good people who caused good trouble in the fight against hate, good people who caused good trouble in the fight against demagogues from McCarthy to Father Conklin to big people who showed such small character when they tried to suppress others. I want to cause good trouble and prove worthy of those who came before. This is not normal. Listen to America. Listen to Americans. They seem to always be ahead of this body. They're rising up in state after state, not along partisan lines, but as an American line. Not because they hate other Americans, but because they love America and know that what does love look like in public? It looks like justice. And there is so much injustice going on. I don't know how long I can stand, but I will stand and speak up. I want to start by reading some of these letters to try to give folk a flavor of what's happened in my office for 71 days. The calls we've gotten have gotten more and more and more numerous. I know I'm not the only one because the calls became so numerous to the Senate as a whole, it locked up the lines. The letters I'm getting, the emails I'm getting, people taking scraps of paper and just writing their hearts out and sending it in to say this is not ordinary times. These are painful times, frightening times, times where people question what's happening to America and worry that there are powerful people trying to fundamentally change our nation in a way that will hurt people to the benefit of the powerful and the wealthy. I look at these letters like this one. I won't read the name, but they say, "Hi, Senator Booker. Medicaid has saved my life many, many times. Without it, many people in America will die. Please help us." Underlined multiple times. Here's another scrap of paper where somebody writes their heart out. "Dear Senator Booker, when I got out of the Navy, I had mental illness. I needed psychiatric medicine to stop going in and out of the hospital. Because of Medicare, I have medicine that has kept me out of the hospital for 18 years. Without Medicaid and my medicine, I will wind up in the hospital. Americans telling me their most vulnerable pains, their most terrified realities are now confronting them, rendering their pride and telling their truth. Here's another one. Dear Senator Booker, I'm writing you today as a constituent. In addition to being a concerned citizen, I'm a 25-year employee of the local Board of Education and a parent of a permanently disabled daughter who has just started receiving Medicaid. Even with her master's degree, my daughter is only able to work 19 hours a week. Therefore, insurance is not provided. Medicaid is a necessity to maintain her physical and emotional health and provide services to assist with her independence so she can continue to be a contributing member of society. By withdrawing funding for Medicaid, the policy would disrupt programs serving disabled and elderly people in New Jersey and throughout the country. And Medicaid is only one area which will potentially be affected by Donald Trump's funding freeze. Please protect Social Security and Medicare for the hardworking Americans who have earned it. Social Security isn't, quote, a handout. We've paid into it with every paycheck throughout our entire working lives, and the 66 million seniors relying on Medicare could have their health care put on hold or canceled. We deserve to know these programs will be there for us. If federal grants are limited, medical and science research limited, including vaccines and disease prevention, they will all be severely impacted. The United States should be a world leader in healthcare, in education, and scientific advancement. This is an embarrassment to us as a country. It should not be possible in America for one single man, even an elected president, to stop funds which Congress has already allocated. I implore you to use your power as my senator and a key member of our government to stand up for what is important to the people of your district. We want to go to work, take care of our families, and ensure all citizens have health services they deserve. These latest orders are inappropriate, untenable, and illegal. As a senator, please take action. Please take action to defend and protect these programs. Thank you for your time. Cory Booker. Recently, it's come to my attention that my students' rights in New Jersey are under threat from new legislation. This has caused distress and uncertainty in my classroom from my students who depend on funds from Medicaid. My students depend on consistency. And a lapse in their education and care would result in regression, trauma, and worse. I teach students in New Jersey who are supported by your legislature. I teach all abilities, meaning many of the students live with ADHD, autism, and other disorders that require extra care and attention. It's my life's mission to bring what I know to those who want to learn it. I love the job I do. I love that I get to spend time with those who need it most and deliver care and education. The job that I do helps my students live more independently and achieve richer and more fulfilling lives. I live out of state, but most of my students are from the state you help legislate. My students' rights are in trouble and need you to advocate for them. I urge you to continue to fight for Medicaid. Please work to oppose any and all cuts or caps to the Medicaid program. Dear Senator Booker, my name is, I am a registered voter in New Jersey. I'm writing today to strongly urge you and your fellow policymakers to oppose all cuts to the Medicaid program, as it is a lifeline for individuals with disabilities. Oppose all cuts or caps. I was a special education teacher for 30 years. And after I retired, I volunteered as a special education advocate for 10 years. I had the privilege of advocating for many disabled children and young adults who were receiving Medicaid services. Medicaid gave many of my clients the opportunity to participate in society by providing daily life skills for independence. Skills reinforced through Medicare programs include shopping, safety, job search, speech and language, just to point out a few of the services provided by Medicaid. My clients require repetition of these skills to function in their daily lives. Without these programs provided by Medicaid, regression will occur and learned skills will not be retained. Without Medicaid, this community will struggle, isolate, and lose any quality of life they've enjoyed since receiving Medicaid services. Medicaid has made a critical difference in the lives of my clients. Cutting and capping Medicaid will have devastating consequences for them and their family. Senator, there are 1.6 million New Jersey residents with disabilities who rely on Medicaid for access to vital care, resources, and essential medications needed to survive. Please support and fight for these vulnerable New Jersey citizens. Please take action to protect these vital programs provided by Medicaid. Thank you in advance for your anticipated efforts in my request of your support for our most vulnerable residents. I'm going to rise tonight, as I said, and stay for as long as I physically can, and I'm going to go through issue area after issue area after issue area and talk specifically to the concerns, to the fears, to the actions taken, to the hurts that are already being felt throughout America, elevating others' voices who don't have the privilege of standing in this body, honoring those Americans who, even though they don't have such a position, they are raising their voice. I will rise for as long as I can to honor them and raise mine. The first area I want to talk about is Medicaid, Medicare, and healthcare, as my constituents spoke to. I don't need to tell anyone the importance of healthcare to humanity. Without our health, we would not be able to do anything else. We would not be able to provide for our families, spend time with our loved ones, do all of the things that make life worth living. That's why I'm going to stand here and explain to people what's going on and how our healthcare programs are at risk and being undermined. The Trump administration and Republicans in Congress are right now discussing how to cut these programs in a way of putting those savings either into tax cuts for the rich. I say either because they're going to be putting them in the tax cuts for the rich, but those tax cuts, as we know, are still going to blow massive trillion-dollar holes in our deficits. They are trying to gut Medicaid and Medicare programs on which nearly a third of our country rely, all to pay for those tax cuts to billionaires and corporations. They're also dismantling the very institutions meant to safeguard our nation's health and well-being. And this is not the first time. They tried this before during Trump's first administration when he unsuccessfully tried to repeal the Affordable Care Act and cut Medicaid despite its popularity across the nation, across the political aisle. He was going after something that wasn't left or right, that Americans were saying in a chorus of conviction that this is about right or wrong. It is wrong to take away health care from millions of people. Let me explain, if I can, or speak to a few points from a recent report by Protect Our Care to explain what the administration is trying to do to our healthcare system. They want to slash almost $1 trillion, about $850 billion from Medicaid, forcing people to choose between health care and putting food on the table. In every state, hundreds of thousands of seniors, children, and working families could lose their health insurance thanks to Republican plans to cut those hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars from Medicaid. It would impose, they seek, burdensome work requirements for people on Medicaid. The last proposal coming from Republicans of that work requirement has one goal: to make it harder for people to qualify for Medicaid, to slash benefits and deny up to 36 million people access to health care so they could fund again those tax breaks for the wealthiest and for corporations. Work requirements only increase the red tape that hardworking families, already burdened by working multiple jobs, caring for children, and more, they're simply increasing the red tape working families have to go through to obtain affordable care. Their intention is also to hike premium costs. Millions of families who use private health insurance saved an average of $2,400 per year on their premiums thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act, advanced premium tax cuts. But now the proposals Republicans are putting forth want to end these savings and raise costs for over 24 million Americans. The proposal wants to take away protections from people with pre-existing conditions. The GOP plans to repeal and undermine the ACA, meaning if they're successful, 135 million people with pre-existing conditions like asthma, cancer, and diabetes would lose critical protections that private insurance companies can charge them higher premiums. The efforts that Republicans are discussing, would raise prescription drug prices. It would stop medical research and stop medical debt relief. Over the first 3 months of his administration, Donald Trump and Republican allies have increased the prices of prescription drugs, including cancer and heart medications, as well as vital antibiotics, delayed the implementation of a Biden administration rule that barred medical debt from showing up on credit reports, cut NIH grants, halted all studies and activities within the NIH relating in any capacity to the health of LGBTQ Americans, including active research programs. And President Trump violated court orders to halt funding freezes to organizations like the NIH. Republicans rejected legislation to cap insulin costs for millions of people with diabetes nationwide. Now they want to raise costs for seniors by repealing the cap for people who rely on Medicare. As many as 1 in 4 of the 7.5 million Americans dependent on insulin are skipping or skimping on doses. I want to say that again. As many as 1 in 4 of the 7.5 million Americans dependent on insulin are skipping or skimping on doses. This is a life-threatening practice. No one in this country should have to bear that. This week, we know Republicans in the Senate will make us vote on a budget that will inevitably be intended to harm the strength of programs like Medicaid and vital health programs in general. Here's what a few organizations are saying about the impact of the budget that will soon be put on this floor, what impact it will have on our health systems. According to this nonpartisan Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, a nonpartisan policy and research institute, this is what they write. The House Republican budget would require deep cuts to Medicaid, and recent statements from House Energy and Commerce Chair Brett Guthrie suggest the Affordable Care Act's Medicaid expansion to adults with low incomes, which cover more than 20 million Americans, will be a prime target. Cutting Medicaid by hundreds of billions of dollars and focusing many of those cuts on the Medicaid expansion would lead millions of people to become uninsured. Eliminating Medicaid expansion was a key goal of Republicans' failed effort to repeal the ACA 8 years ago, and Congress should once again reject efforts to undermine it. Recent Republican proposals, such as reducing the federal matching rate for Medicaid expansion, repealing the 2021 Rescue Plan incentive for new states to expand, or taking away Medicaid coverage from certain adult enrollees by imposing work requirements, would leave expansion enrollees at risk. They could lose their coverage due to the work requirements, or their state might drop their coverage due to a drastic increase in state costs. 12 American states have poison pill laws that would automatically end expansion coverage or review of the coverage if the federal matching rate drops below 90%. In those states, expansion enrollees are even in graver risk. Representative Guthrie's recent statement confirms that House Republicans are eyeing proposals such as work requirements, a reduction in the federal matching rate, or a per capita cap on funding for the expansion group. This last option could shift $72 billion and $190 billion in costs from states from 2026 to 2034, putting that burden from $72 billion to $190 billion on states, increasing the state costs expansion by 41 to 108%, and thus jeopardizing medical coverage for millions. 40 states plus Washington, D.C. have adopted the Medicaid expansion. 40 states plus the District of Columbia have adopted the Medicaid expansion, helping adults with low incomes become healthier and more financially secure. Health coverage through expansion improves people's access to something that makes so much economic sense. It improves people's access to preventative care, to primary care. It also provides care for people with chronic illnesses, prevents premature deaths, and protects people from catastrophic out-of-pocket medical costs. Let me pull away from the nonpartisan group's remarks for a second, because I saw this as a mayor. When you scrimp on regular treatment for people with chronic care, when you scrimp on preventative disease, it costs more to taxpayers. I saw that because folks would end up in my emergency rooms in Newark. And the care there is so much more expensive. For a taxpayer, you get a much better deal in helping someone treat their chronic disease. You get a much better deal in giving them regular. And had to ask myself, costs all to give billionaires more of a tax cut. Children's ability to learn and thrive is compromised. Schools saved money not by cutting health care, but by giving people better access to nutritious, healthy foods. You are what you eat. We're not coming up with bipartisan proposals to save money, to create efficiencies, to do things that can make programs run better. Heck, when I was mayor, we were able to lower our expenditures, create more efficiency, have more happier customer service. There are ways to do that, but no, This is folks coming with an axe to cut your health care, or your neighbor's health care, or your elder's health care. It's not a government program. It's a commitment we make to each other in the greatest nation on the planet Earth. We say we'll take care of our children. We say we'll take care of expectant mothers. We say we'll take care of our own. But they passed that House budget resolution. Republicans who called themselves moderates or budget hawks, they all voted for it except for one who had the crazy thing to do in Washington to tell the truth. Massey said that by their own numbers, this don't add up. What they're pushing on the American people is going to steal from the future generations by racking up trillions of debt. He stood on principle. They're not even doing what they're telling us they're going to do. $880 billion in Medicaid funding cuts. It's not trimming the fat. It's not founding efficiencies. It's not a plan to cut out any possible corruption. It is to make children and expectant mothers and seniors and people with disabilities have a harder time accessing health care, which we already said that Martin Luther King, of all the forms of inequality, injustice in health care, is the most shocking and inhumane. Not bigotry, not poverty, two things he fought so nobly against. He said the most inhumane, the most unjust are what we're talking about here. Take away access to health care from children, take away access to health care from our elders, take away access to health care to people with chronic diseases. Why? Why? To cut the deficit? Well, there's some Republicans willing to tell the truth. It's not going to cut the deficit. To take from the poor and give it to the rich and powerful? Well, we know the rich and powerful will get bigger tax cuts. They're not shrinking the governments, folks. They're creating bigger and bigger governmental obligations. And what do they mean? When you look at 10 years out and have trillions and trillions and trillions of more, it means that future generations, or maybe 10 years from now, that their debt payments are going to grow more and more and more, taking away more money that we have as a collective body, as Americans, to invest in scientific research, to invest in cutting-edge medical technology. So let's be clear. Let's be clear. Children from low-income families would lose access to routine checkups, vaccinations, and emergency care. Seniors who depend on Medicaid for long-term care, many of whom are already exhausting their life savings, would be left without options. People with disabilities who require constant medical attention, specialized equipment, and home-based services would face uncertainty and loss of those services. And let us not forget the low-income adults who gain coverage through Medicaid expansion, who work hard every day. They got Medicaid expansion, access to Medicaid through expansion under the Affordable Care Act. For them, this is not ideology. For them, this is not political philosophy. For them, this is life or death. It's about survival. These proposed cuts would also devastate the very infrastructure of our healthcare system. I've heard this from hospitals. Again, Republicans and Democratic leaders in my state who know our hospitals are speaking to this injustice. Medicare provides nearly 19% of all hospital revenue. It allows rural hospitals already on the brink to keep their doors open. Rural hospitals. It would take safety net hospitals that serve uninsured and underinsured populations without Medicaid, with these cuts, these institutions would crumble. That's not rhetoric. I've talked to my safety net hospital. I did an event, and I remember the fear in this hospital administrator's eyes, who lives every day to help the poor, to help the uninsured. In many ways, we share a faith. And I know he believes he's answering the highest calling of his country and his faith to help those who come with nothing. Because when hospitals close, when Medicaid staff lose their jobs, entire communities lose access to care. Ambulances end up having to drive farther and farther. Wait times increase. Lives are at risk. The ripple effects are vast. Schools will suffer when children with disabilities lose access to Medicaid-supported services like physical therapy, transportation, and mental health support. Children's ability to learn and thrive is compromised. Schools in rural areas where Medicaid often funds on-site nurses and telehealth programs, they would be stripped of essential support. What we are witnessing is again, don't get caught in this Washington parlance. This is not a normal time. This is a threat to millions of Americans. It's not a budgetary proposal. It is like the metaphorical sword of Damocles. It is people all over this country who are beginning to see what this really means. It's an economic crisis that would be rolled upon states and rural areas and communities and cities. It is a moral crisis that speaks to the soul of our nation. It is a deliberate, calculated and being calculated right now. It is a deliberate and calculated attack on health care for Americans in order, again, to give tax cuts to the wealthy. If the enhanced federal match for Medicaid is limited, one of the things on the chopping block, states would be forced to absorb the difference, an estimated $88 billion every year. That is a 29% increase in state-funded Medicare spending per resident. To fill those holes, states would be left with impossible choices: either raise taxes or slash services. Education, infrastructure, public safety. For them, they would have to figure out where to get the money from, or else they'd be slashing services. It's an unholy choice. Cutting Medicare doesn't make us stronger. It will weaken our economy. It will raise healthcare costs for everyone and push millions of Americans into crises that will ripple and radiate through their lives, their families' lives, their work lives. Hospitals will pass unpaid bills onto insured patients. Healthcare premiums will rise. People will delay care, omit medications, and then show up in emergency rooms later more sick and therefore more expensive to treat. And in the end, who pays for it? Who pays for this moral failure, this financial failure? Who pays for it? We do. The American people. And who gets rich on this? Well, I know the last tax cut that they want to extend, the people who make the most money off of this system and this cuts because of the tax cuts they will get will be billionaires and working families in America. People who paying insurance rates hurts, is hard, is difficult. People who have high premiums and co-pays. It's the rest of us that pay. So I want to talk about the people at risk. There's nearly 12 million people who qualify for both Medicare and Medicaid, our nation's most vulnerable. They'd lose critical wraparound services like long-term care, dental care, vision, and non-emergency transportation, services that are not luxuries for these folks, but they're lifelines. A higher share of those with both Medicaid and Medicare have cognitive impairments and conditions like Alzheimer's, and my father who had dementia. We're a well-off family. I saw the challenges, the resources, the drains, the physical challenges for his primary caregiver, my mother. Millions of Americans, though, would rely on Medicaid, and they would face devastating choices: quit their jobs to provide full-time care, or leave their loved ones while they go off to work on a job without the support they need. When it comes to Alzheimer's and dementia, I know personally you cannot leave someone without the care. Nursing homes may be forced to shut their doors or cut staffing levels to dangerous lows. In fact, people who can't take care of their elders, they might be going to nursing homes, which again increases costs for taxpayers. Home health care services, often the only thing keeping people in their communities out of institutions, that would disappear. This would be a crisis for elder care. This would be a crisis for disability services. What it is, when a nation isn't taking care of its elders, it's a crisis of our national character. Medicaid also plays a profound role in the success of children and their well-being. Nearly half of all children in the U.S. are covered by Medicaid and CHIP. Research shows that when children have access to care, they are more likely to stay in school, graduate, and earn more as adults. That's not surprising to people, just to think it through. It's true. If kids have access to health care, they succeed more in life. Medicaid helps diagnose learning disorders, treat chronic conditions, and ensure children don't fall behind simply because they are born into poverty. It's essential to the American dream, that just because you're poor, it shouldn't affect your destiny. And for us to be the America of which we speak, a child born in poverty shouldn't have their future cut off because they can't get the health care to empower them to thrive. Talk to any school district in any state, in any county. Those resources are necessary to help children. Medicaid pays for nearly half of the births in the United States. The United States, as I said earlier, has this shameful distinction of a massive maternal health crisis. We have the highest rate of maternal deaths of any high-income nation. I'm going to say that again. America has the highest rates of maternal deaths, women dying in childbirth or in the days after, of any nation. A majority of these maternal deaths take place during that postpartum period, the days after birth. For years, I have fought for Medicaid to provide coverage for women for up to 1 year postpartum instead of just 60 days. In 2022's Congress, I was so happy that states had the option to expand Medicaid coverage for up to 1 year postpartum. It is one of the solutions to this maternal healthcare crisis that expert after expert after expert says. Just make sure those women who gave birth are not knocked off of healthcare after 2 months. As of this January, 49 states plus the District of Columbia have expanded postpartum Medicaid coverage past those 60 days. Hey, we're stepping in the right direction to show that we love our moms. We value those life givers that are mothers. We value them. But cutting Medicare means potentially eliminating the progress we made towards ending that maternal mortality crisis. It's just no justifying that in a nation this great and this wealthy. We talk so much about children and motherhood. All of us should be coming together about this maternal health crisis, but what's happening now, again, is the very program that's helped us to begin to address this is under attack. When we invest in Medicaid, we are investing in the future, in children who grow up to be healthier, in seniors who age with dignity, in rural communities with limited access to health care, and services, and families who don't have to choose between a prescription and rent. This is about health, but I want to tell you, for all those doing the math at home, you cannot have a thriving economic engine without good health care. The two are incompatible. Widespread sickness, illness, and disease, and people who can't get their health issues covered, takes away from our economic strength. In fact, just cutting Medicaid would cost jobs, nurses' aides, support staff, medical technicians. Entire communities depend on funding that Medicaid provides. Cutting it would destabilize state budgets, force those impossible trade-offs, and widen the gap between the richest in our country and the rest. A gap that's already widening at stunning rates. These cuts are not about efficiency. Don't let anybody tell you these cuts are about efficiency. I know a lot about making government more efficient. This is not about innovation. There's so many things that we as a country should be doing to deal with medical innovation. And I'll be the first to say, Republicans and Democrats have failed to step up to the 21st century and do things that really can create more efficiencies in our healthcare system. I really hope to see more bold thinkers about creating real efficiency. But what they're doing now is not about efficiency. It's not about innovation. It's not about the heart priorities of Americans who know everything that I'm saying. The letters I've gotten, Republicans and Democrats and independents in my state, scared people, they know what this is about. Republicans in New Jersey who run hospitals know what this is about. This should be a bipartisan strategy to how do we make our society more healthy and less dependent on health care. And when it comes to health care, heck, let's not do the stupid things like cutting scientific and biosciences and the research that often leads to medical breakthroughs. Let's come together and figure out how to deliver services more efficiently. Making Americans healthier, I don't believe them. They're cutting access for kids to fresh and healthy foods, or cutting school lunch resources. There's a way to do this that should be bringing the best ideas from both sides of the aisle to deal with these issues, but that's not what they're doing. Every data point, every story, hospitals from rural areas to urban areas, everyone is saying the same thing and illustrating the same point. Medicaid is critical to the health of some of the most vulnerable Americans. It's critical to our elders, to our children, to our mothers. It is a lifeline for more than 72 million people. With control of the Senate, the House, and the presidency, Republicans have the opportunity to dream big. They have an opportunity to lead with a vision for better health in America. To come before the people and Congress and hearings and say, this is our vision for American health and well-being. We're going to show what some private companies did. They cut their health care costs and improved the health of their citizens, of their employees, by providing better access to food. There are so many good ideas that I've learned when I was mayor from Republicans, from private sector people. But those aren't the ideas that are coming forward. The ideas that are coming forward is, hey, let's just send to the Energy and Commerce Committee the mandate to cut $880 billion. Let's rush now. Let's get it done before our narrow majority somehow gets undermined. Let's just cut. And in the end, what's the result? Americans get sicker, driving up overall health care costs, all to give billionaires more of a tax cut. I know the character of so many of my friends in this body on both sides of the aisle. This is not who we are. It is not who we are. But God, there's no big vision. There's no big dream for health care. Instead of improving Medicaid and increasing funding, as 42% of Americans support, They want to make extraordinary cuts that will demolish a program. They are proposing that $880 billion cut from Medicaid, taking health care away from millions of Americans. They want to impose work requirements, even though 90% of Medicaid beneficiaries are already working or cannot work for legitimate reasons. Arkansas actually tried this. I love case studies. They tried this in 2017, and the results were disastrous. People lost coverage that they shouldn't have, and employment didn't increase. Nationally, such requirements could put 36 million people at risk of losing their health care. They're proposing failed policies, not breakthrough ideas, not a bold vision that I know is in America's heart. This repeal that some folks are saying that they want to do to save money, a hatred for previous president. They want to repeal Biden-era rules that made Medicaid and CHIP enrollment easier, less red tape, easier for seniors and children. Let's repeal that, they say. They want to end a rule requiring minimum staffing standards in nursing homes, including 24/7 access to registered nurses, one of the hardest, most underappreciated jobs in America. Let's get less access to these noble, noble professionals. They propose per capita caps that would upend Medicaid's financing model in every state, leaving states with less money to meet their residents' needs, and in states that expanded Medicaid under the ACA, these cuts could jeopardize coverage for 20 million people who gained access. The budget that they're proposing would require deeper cuts. Speaker Johnson claims these changes are about rooting out fraud, waste, and abuse. But that's not what's happening, folks. What's happening is an assault on a program that provides dignity, health, and stability, economic growth, improved outcomes for kids, more respect for our elders, care for the disabled. Nearly 2 million New Jerseyans, 2 million people in my state rely on Medicaid. And yet, our state is slated to see cuts of up to $5.2 billion. Medicaid accounts for a quarter, more than a quarter of New Jersey's state budget. Think about that. It accounts for more than a quarter of our state's budget. In my state, one of the hardest working states that's out there, just their work requirement would put about 700,000 of my neighbors, my fellow statespeople, at risk of losing their health care. Medicaid covers about 1/5 of hospital spending. At University Hospital in Newark, New Jersey's only level 1 trauma center, more than $149 million in potential cuts loom. I know this hospital. I have been there when my officers have been injured. I've been there when my firefighters in Newark were injured. I've been there when heroic citizens are injured and brought there. It is our level 1 trauma center. People from all around our region are sent there. These emergency room workers are incredible. Heck, they've treated me coming out of an emergency. And they're facing $149 million in cuts, and their leadership, knowing how vital that hospital it is, how that hospital stands in the breach between life and death, health and illness, they know what it would mean. We should be strengthening this program through innovations that come from people on both sides of the aisle. We should be coming together as a body and saying, okay, let's spitball this, let's put up the best ideas in America to make things more efficient. Oh, wait a minute, you mean if we treat chronic diseases with access to healthy food, we might actually be able to lower diabetes rates, lower hypertension rates, lower obesity rates? Well, that's one great way to make this investment happen. You mean there is technology and innovation that's happening right now with our best scientists that could create better access to telehealth, it could create more efficiency in medical records, it could cut down on mistakes that are still made in medical care, like combining the wrong drugs or other challenges that up costs. There's systems that we could create that could create more transparency and eliminate more real fraud and go after the fraudsters themselves in a more efficient manner. There are so many things that we could do if we came together as a body, but what are we doing instead? Following our president that wants his tax cuts renewed. What did those tax cuts do the first time around? Most of the benefits went to the wealthiest people and corporations. And it drove trillions of dollars, the largest deficit growth that we have seen in a generation. Rapacious, misguided budgeting, creating bigger and bigger debt payments. I remind you, Clinton, balanced budget. Bush, the first president in American history that didn't call for the common sacrifice to go to war. We spent trillions of dollars in those foreign wars, and guess what, he said? No common sacrifice, only about 1% of our people will fight in those wars. I'm going to give you a tax cut. Well, that makes no sense. You're going to drive up deficits that my children will have to pay for. Obama comes along, and at least he lowers his deficit spending, but then Trump comes in and increases it by trillions of dollars on the backs of working Americans to give those benefits to the wealthiest. And now, Biden, who shrunk the deficit a bit, didn't eliminate it, still spent what any fiscally prudent person might say is really problematic. Let's not make this blindly partisan. But for anybody who would criticize Biden and follow Trump into what he's doing with this budget proposal that's going to slash health care for millions of Americans, increase the deficit by trillions and trillions of dollars, and make Elon Musk richer and richer? Is that your solution? It violates our values. It violates our national character. It violates the highest principles put forth by the most noble people in American history. And I stand today, and I will not sit down for hours and hours if God gives me the ability to stand here, because I want to read the voices of Americans. I want to share their voices in this body. I want it to echo in history. I want it to be recorded by these extraordinary people who stand here every day and record my words and my colleagues' words. I want it to be in the congressional record. I want Deanna to... Her story, Deanna's daughter is disabled and Medicaid provides her with life-saving medications, medical equipment, orthotics, and multiple specialists for her rare disease diagnosis. She has life-threatening seizures and requires rescue seizure medications, oxygen and CPR, and has nurses that accompany her to school and meet her medical needs during the day so that she can go to work. Deanna is terrified. She uses this word. She is terrified of her daughter losing her Medicaid. She's so afraid, she's literally talking openly about going to Canada and asking for asylum there so that her daughter has the health care needs met. That is outrageous to me that an American who's fearful for their child would think about fleeing to Canada for better health care. Wendy and Cassie. Wendy is the mother, and she wrote about the threats that Medicaid cuts would pose to her daughter, Cassie. Cassie is 32-year-old. She has Rett syndrome, RTT, a rare neurological disorder that significantly impairs even basic motor functions, requiring the individual to have lifelong care and supervision. Without Medicaid funding, Cassie and Wendy would not be able to afford housing, the day program, the prescriptions that she needs on a daily basis. Tanya and Cameron, God, Tanya uses Medicare and Medicaid to care for her son, her beloved child Cameron. Cameron is battling stage 4 cancer and is confined to a wheelchair. Due to the severity of his illness, he cannot be without his cancer treatment and prescription medication. Medicare and Medicaid coverage is, for them, they say, a matter of life and death for Cameron. Here's this amazing group in New Jersey, in Cherry Hill. Amazing group. The Cherry Hill Free Clinic. Volunteers sustain the Cherry Hill Free Clinic. Doctors that give up their own time because they are driven by the conviction that in America we take care of each other, we love each other. And when you say love your neighbor, love requires sacrifice and service. These doctors and professionals that volunteer their time at the Cherry Hill Clinic, I just want to tell you, God bless you. Thank you for living our American values and the values of your faith traditions. The Cherry Hill Free Clinic provides free health care, treatment, and medication to low-income individuals, not just in Cherry Hill, but throughout New Jersey. Without the support of Medicare and Medicaid coverage for their parents, the free clinic would not be able to provide the extent of services and care that their patients desperately need. They would not be able to be the source of light to so many people that are facing scary darkness, think that it's not going to happen to me, that cancer diagnosis. It's not going to happen to me, that rare disease that affects the child. It's not going to happen to me. But when it does, and they can't imagine how they will make ends meet, they find in the Cherry Hill Clinic doctors and medical professionals willing to step up, and they've been doing extraordinary things that would make every American proud, and now they see what's coming from this from this Donald Trump proposal. Jean is an awesome soul. She's a disabled citizen. She relies on Medicaid coverage for her frequent hospitalizations. Without Medicaid, she would be unable to receive the critical care that she needs. God bless you, Jean. Susan writes to us. She's a disabled person who's confined to a wheelchair. Susan relies on Medicaid for her health care. Medicaid provides her wheelchair transportation to get her to her medical appointments. Without Medicaid, she would not have medical coverage or the transportation means to receive the essential health care. Edna's 98. God bless her. 98. What a life. And now, as a 98-year-old, she now has dementia. Her daughter is 78 years old. And I can't imagine this moment when you realize at 78 that you can't any longer care for your 98-year-old mom due to her worsening dementia. Edna received Medicaid coverage and is now able to have full-time care at a rehabilitation center for senior citizens. Her daughter, at 78 years old, is so grateful to live in a country that her 98-year-old mom can be in a rehabilitation care center. But they know what savage cuts in Medicaid would do. Randy and Dylan. Randy enrolled her son Dylan in Medicaid. Dylan is 10. He's wheelchair bound due to Duchenne muscular dystrophy. Dylan requires frequent medical care and daily heart medications to prevent illness with his heart functioning. To prevent the issues with his heart functioning, forgive me. Randy relies on Medicaid to provide medical care for Dylan, who Randy loves so much. Medicaid covers the costs and his critical prescription medications. And then there's Teresa, who recently lost her job and required urgent medical assessments due to a medical issue that was discovered by her doctor. during what was a difficult time, where you go to the doctor and the doctor discovers something that is so urgent that you need immediate support, Teresa was without insurance and needed to receive care as instructed by her doctor. Due to her enrollment in Medicaid, she was able to receive the diagnostic testing that she needed. It's a good story, but stories like that will become more difficult. Pamela writes that Medicaid is essential to her 22-year-old son's life. He has epilepsy, cerebral palsy, vision impairment, and too many other complex medical issues for Pam to list to us. Medicaid provides his health benefits and is his funding source to attend his day program and receive therapies. Private duty nursing comes to his home, and it pays for vital medications. She writes to me that our private insurance is not enough to cover our son's complex medical needs. We would need to be able to pay for his monthly prescription costs. We would not be able to pay for his monthly prescription costs, nor the lengthy hospital stays when he's sick. We would not have the nursing hours to support his care for him to be able to continue to live at home, nor would we be able to leave home on weekdays and have a day program to attend. Pamela writes, as his parent, I need to take an early retirement from public school teaching to care for our son because the medical coverage he has just isn't enough. It doesn't provide for his transportation and his day program. So she's leaving her job early. She writes, and she bolds this, our disabled community members and their families deserve better. Medicaid provides for a bare minimum existence. And she has a message for the lies being told by too many. She says, there are no excesses here in my house. Sally and Mike. We rely on Medicaid for our 2 adult children with disabilities for long-term care, especially for my daughter who just finished her 2.5-year chemo treatment regime. We will need it for monthly checkups and prevention of a relapse. We use the funding to provide the much-needed care she needs at home. We also have 90-plus-year-old parents who need Medicaid in order to survive. We are the real sandwich generation, caring for 2 adult children with special needs and 2 very elderly parents who couldn't survive on their own. Please do everything in your power to help fund and not cut Medicaid in any way. Thank you for your time and your commitment in helping the more vulnerable population. I mean, Sally and Mike, you're not alone. That sandwich generation, taking care of children and parents, you're taking care of adult children and 90-plus-year-old parents. I hear you. I hear you. Carol, my son Jason is 41 and autistic. He has severe behavioral issues. Medicaid has enabled my son to attend a day program 3 days a week. The program bills Medicaid for his participation. We would not have the financial resources to pay for my son's day program. Medicaid helps us to use our son's living at home with his loved ones, not in a group home. We save the state money by taking care of him. Do not cut this vital program. Rosemary. Now, Rosemary says that she has an adult son, and that son has CP, a seizure disorder, cystic. This is where maybe I should have gone to medical school and not law school. Cystic encephalomalacia. My cousin, the doctor, is here. She would be able to help me if she was down here. But it is her son, her adult son is on the autism spectrum. Yet he earned a BA. Yet he earned a BA on the autism spectrum and lives independently, but with our support, and works a part-time job. She put independently in quotes. If he loses his Medicaid coverage, he will not be able to afford to live where he lives, or most importantly, he will not be able to afford his meds. He has medications that would run $500 a month. We live with the anxiety. We live with the anxiety. We live with that anxiety that millions of Americans live with, that erodes them, that burns at their spirit. That anxiety that has put millions of Americans into bankruptcy, that anxiety that I can't afford my medications, that anxiety that I can't care for my children, that anxiety that I won't have that resources, that anxiety. We live with the anxiety of Medicaid cuts. With every report about what House Republicans are doing, we support anything that can be done to maintain Medicaid. Please, Senator. Danielle. She writes that I'm the oldest sibling to my two younger brothers, Matt and Christian, who have been living with a rare neuromuscular disease since they were diagnosed as babies. Throughout their lives, Matt and Chris, along with my parents and family, have fought to ensure that they have the best care possible, despite how unknown and under-researched their condition is. Taking Medicaid away from them would strip Matt and Christian of basic access to specialized care that they rely on, and therefore strip them of their dignity and their independence. As someone who has had a front row seat watching two people I love suffer from a neuromuscular condition, and as a human being who believes in the right to access medical care, I implore our representatives and the Trump administration to consider the devastating impact that these cuts would have on people like my brothers. Slashing funds for an already underfunded program is not only the wrong target in the name of, quote, efficiency, but also a decision that would cement our nation's treacherous path toward becoming a nation that does not seek justice for all. Instead, a nation that only serves those in power, only serves the powerful, only serves the wealthy. As your constituent affected by neuromuscular disease, I am concerned about the potential unintended consequences of the efforts to so-called reform Medicaid. 72 million Americans rely on Medicaid for affordable, accessible, and state health coverage, including children, pregnant women, parents, seniors, and individuals with disabilities. Any effort to reform Medicaid should not inadvertently prevent patients from having access to the health care that they deserve. Danielle, I hear you. Judith, she goes right to the point. Please stop Trump. Please stop Trump now. He is going after Medicaid. I have an adult, severely autistic granddaughter who relies on Medicaid for her special needs program. A country is judged by how it meets the needs of the weakest people, she writes. Please stop him. I want to read your words again, Judith. A country is judged by how it meets the needs of the weakest people. A country is judged by how it meets the needs of the weakest people. Elizabeth writes, Medicaid helps me access health care and direct supports in my home and my community. Cuts to Medicaid would mean I wouldn't have the services I need to live on my own with supports and would be forced to live in a more restrictive setting. Sandra writes, Medicaid has allowed my son's needs to be met at home and not in a group home. It has allowed my husband to participate in his caregiving, not a stranger. It has allowed him to be employed with the aid of a job coach. These are just a few things in addition to health care. If the cuts to Medicaid happen, it goes away. Alicia, Medicaid provides health care and services to my developmentally disabled adult child. If Medicare funding is cut, my son will not have the health care they need and the programs to attend. Maggie, my 28-year-old son, Will, has Down syndrome. He currently lives in a full and active, inclusive life. His life is full. His life is active. He's in the community where he's cherished. He lives in the community he's cherished. He has wonderful support staff and lots of activities that keep him healthy and happy. His days include volunteering at a senior citizen center, working at the local gym, shopping, leisure activities, speech therapy. He does music therapy. We follow the self-direction model, which is work on my end, but I would not have it any other way. But if Medicare funding is cut, these cuts would impact his livelihood. Nibble. Without my Medicaid, I would not be able to be as mobile nor independent. Without Medicaid evaluating my physical disability, cerebral palsy, and related limitations, and prescribing me an electric power wheelchair for daily independence and assistance with mobility, and even pain management due to not being able to walk well, I am actually up for a new wheelchair this year, as it was allowable every 5 years for a new wheelchair prescription. Without my Medicaid, I would not have been properly diagnosed with things like sleep apnea in 2017. I now use a CPAP machine to force air into my body so I can sleep peacefully instead of gasping for air at night. Without my Medicaid, I would not be able to be fitted for a leg brace for my physical support and mobility, enabling me to actually stand up straight and walk without my wheelchair. Without my Medicaid, I would not be able to be a full-time employee, a full-time worker. Laura, Medicaid has provided my sister with benefits to help support her medical and mental health issues since she graduated high school. She is now 33 and living with me and my husband after being separated from our parents that are now in assisted living and nursing home arrangements. Wow. Susan has never worked or been married because of her mental disability, and she is dependent on her Medicaid benefits. Please keep these benefits in place for people like my sister who don't have much in their lives they can depend on. Laura, your sister's now living with you. After being separated from your parents who are now in a nursing home. I see you. Michael, I need Medicaid because it provides me the ability to get my anxiety medication and to afford my therapist. I use Medicaid for medical, dental, and visual visits. I wear glasses. Without Medicaid, I am unable to live or function in this world. Robin, Courtney is my 35-year-old daughter with severe disabilities. From 2009 to present, she has needed crucial surgeries, as well as medications and hospital stays. Medicaid has made the financial support for these procedures possible. It has saved her life, and I can tell from her letter that Robin loves her 35-year-old daughter, Courtney. Mary, Medicaid is helping to improve my daughter's life through the services of the Division of Developmental Disabilities. Without it, she would be left to whittle away at home 7 days a week with no community interaction. She is learning pre-vocational skills in a manner that she is validated and viewed as a person with strengths. Thank you, Mary. Allison, I'm my daughter's caregiver in New Jersey. Medicaid-funded programs allow her to remain an active part of our community at home with her family. If Medicaid is cut, we would lose our health care. It would be devastating. Gihan, my daughter has a disability. Through Medicaid, she receives a lot of services to help her improve and progress, also to help her stay active and social. She gets speech therapy, occupational and physical therapy. People come to her home to help her as well. If Medicaid cuts happen, she will stop all the services she receives, and her life will be threatened. Please, she must keep her Medicaid, because as a parent, I don't know what I can do with my daughter if that is happening. It will be so hard for her and us. Roseanne, Medicaid has supplied the nurses that take care of my daughter, of my disabled granddaughter I'm raising at home instead of being sent to an institution. She will put her life at risk for a medical emergency or fatal injury without nurses here. Ash, my daughter takes speech therapy, occupational and physical therapy, and tutoring. So if that is all gone, she will stop progress, and she will be more disabled and will be unable to do anything by herself or live inadvertently. She needs a lot of help, and if these Medicaid cuts happen, I don't know what I will do with her, and it'll make life so hard. These Americans are facing challenges